While waging the warfare, this wist they but little, brave battle thanes, while his body intending to slit into slivers and seeking his spirit, that the relentless foeman, nor finest of weapons of all of the earth, nor any of the war bills, was willing to injure. Beowulf, Chapter 13, 8th century Anglo-Saxon poem. When the clan Diamond Shark clusters from Alpha, Beta, and Omega galaxies landed on the outskirts of the Kozais Valley in the 1st and 2nd of May in 3052, their goals for their piece of the trials on Tukayyid were lofty. A considerable amount of time and energy was spent on planning on what to do to capitalize upon their holdings after their victory against the Comguard, rather than adequately preparing for the battle to take them. Hubris was on display as internal tensions between Trueborn and Freeborn warriors contributed to what ended up being a comedy of errors which doomed Clan Diamond Shark's efforts, and by May 7th, the survivors of Alpha and Gamma galaxies were fleeing to their dropships. The Freeborn warriors in Omega Galaxy fought a noble last stand to buy the time for the retreat and earned at least begrudging respect from Khan Hawker. He had underestimated both Comstar and his own Freeborn warriors, and it cost the clan dearly. However, from the fires of embarrassment and defeat, there was a bright side. Look at us being all optimistic. That bright side was the debut of a brand new 45-ton clan Omnimech, which earned a nasty reputation with the Comguard, and then later warriors across the Inner Sphere. The mech was given the name Grendel, which was a reference to a legendary monster from Beowulf, who is cursed to wander the fens and moors and prey upon human settlements. Though Grendel has a good run of gobbling up warriors whole, the monster's reign of terror is eventually brought to an end after a couple of clashes with the legendary warrior Beowulf. If you haven't read it, I would strongly recommend it, especially if you're into grimdark tales. Though details concerning specific actions with the Grendel on Tukayyid are sparse, we do know that it was among the forces of the Diamond Sharks that fought in the Kozais Valley and among the Smoke Jaguars in their ill-fated attempt to run the gauntlet in the Dinju Mountains and Rasis River Delta. Though the clans failed in achieving victory, the Grendel performed well enough that the other clans became interested in obtaining it for their own tumens, either through trade or trials. The Anvil's computer finally identified the aggressor as a Grendel, one of the Smoke Jaguar's newer and less commonly seen designs. The big dual-purpose gun mounted in the mech's right arm told Masters that he was facing one of the variants, as the primary configuration of that mech carried no such weapon. The Anvil's Warbook program sorted through Trent's intelligence report before determining that the crest was that of the Golden Fang Sibco. Masters leapt forward, again hammering the lighter clan mech with his heavy pulse lasers. The Grendel, as vicious and as tough as the Norse monster for which it was named, absorbed the punishment and replied with a savage blast of laser and cannon fire. Sword and Fire, Twilight of the Clans, Volume 5, page 187 by Thomas S. Gressman. To better understand why everyone was suddenly interested in procuring themselves a Grendel, we need to dig into its internals and look at what it can do. Laying down the plans for this 45-ton Omnimech, the Clan Diamond Shark designers designated it the Mongrel, which some are likely to have already pointed out in the video comments. While both names do have their charm, I've always gravitated more to the historical and menacing name given to it by the Comguard. It's similar to the Ebon Jaguar Cauldron-born Quandary. Sometimes a nickname is just better. Constructed around a Process 12 endosteel frame and a 315 consolidated XL fusion engine, the Grendel was intended to find survivability through mobility. The 119 km/h top speed and 7 fixed jump jets made sure that this medium could keep up with many of its lighter peers. In fact, one of the most frequent uses for the Grendel was as the heavy punch in a star of lighter mechs. Keep that 7-11-7 movement profile in mind, as this is just a 45-ton mech and that 7.5 tons of ferrofibrous armor only goes so far. It's worth noting the Grendel isn't under-armored, as that 7.5 is just a half-ton shy of the max possible for its weight. The engine 10 double heatsinks were deemed a good baseline for possible configurations, and with gyro and cockpit factored in, that left 13.5 tons of mass for pod weapons and equipment. While that might not seem like a lot, let's look at the comparables. The Ice Ferret sported 9.5 tons of pod space, but the difference was spent on 2 extra heatsinks and a larger engine. The Shadowcat had an impressive 17 tons of pod space because of its smaller 270XL engine, 1 fewer jump jet, and a half-ton less armor. So looking at the other 45-ton Omnimechs around the same time period, the Grendel ends up in a happy middle place between speed and pod space. Fans of the channel know that I love a good generalist battlemech. With all its various bits and pieces installed, the designers of the Grendel were left with this 13.5 tons of pod space and 22 critical locations spread largely across the side torsos and arms. As we dig into the various configurations, we're going to see there's quite a bit you can do with 13.5 tons. With enough duct tape and determination, anything is possible. The primary configuration for the Grendel highlights the mech's utility as a generalist on the battlefield. Starting at long range, the ER large laser in the right arm eats up 4 tons of pod space but provides consistent damage beyond the reach of most other weaponry. Battle reports suggest that clan warriors used their ER large laser and the mech's speed to keep distance on a foe until it was softened up, and once ready, they closed in for the kill. To aid that effort, 3 ER medium lasers were added to the mech, 2 in the left arm and 1 in the head, just to be sure. At close range, the Streak SRM-6 in the right torso comes into play, and it can mean a quick death to an unlucky light mech that wanders too close, or something heavier that has already absorbed more than its fair share of laser hits on the way in. With the odd half-ton of mass in mind, the ER small laser was added to the right arm. Finally, 2 double heatsinks were added to the Grendel to bring the total to 12. While overall the damage output is impressive, heat was an issue for the Prime and it needed consistent oversight. A full alpha strike with the Streak SRM and ER small laser left the mech deep into the red, but even with a more modest ER large laser and ER mediums shot, that pushed the heat 5+ into the red if the Grendel was on the run. However, if the moment is right and the prey is right there, go wild, cut down that mech and worry about the next turn later. If you're looking for a variant that can play fire support, the A configuration relied upon a pair of long-range Missile 15 racks split between the side torsos and each fed by 2 tons of ammunition. The launchers were backed up by a medium pulse laser and an emotional support ER small laser placed into that right arm. The A configuration is no fuss, no muss, and it's technically useful at all ranges thanks to the lack of the minimum range on the Clan LRM launchers. Still, it's ammo dependent and those 16 shots could go faster than the Mechwarrior realizes if he or she isn't careful. The 10 double heatsinks were adequate for general use, but the Grendel A could see some heat buildup if firing its weapons and leaping the full 7 hexes on jump jets. Word has it that the A configuration Grendels were often seen working with ice ferrets and shadowcats skulking around the battlefield and causing mayhem. If you'd like to lean in on the mid-range brawling build, the B configuration offers accurate and even arguably intimidating fire with its loadout. The right arm featured an Ultra AC5 autocannon which could hammer targets out to 21 hexes. The single ton of ammunition, just 20 shots, was placed into the right torso. Starting at 15 hexes, the ER medium laser in the right arm came into play, and at 12 hexes, 2 medium pulse lasers split between the left arm and right torso could add their accurate and powerful fire into the fray. Finally, that crucial ER small laser was placed into the center torso. It's an interesting mix of weaponry, but whether or not you like the B configuration might fall to just how useful you think that UAC-5 autocannon is in the right arm. At 8 tons with its ammunition, that's a big investment from the total 13.5, and all for just 5 or a possible 10 damage per turn if double firing. Judged on its own merits, I don't think it's a bad build. I would personally go with the Prime and deal with its heat issues over worrying about ammunition and said ammunition exploding if I don't use it fast enough. Moving on to the C configuration, it's clear that someone at Clan Diamond Shark was trying to offload some autocannons because this one also features a hefty one. The LB-10X autocannon in the right arm offered decent damage potential and accurate fire, but it eats up almost all of its available pod space when combined with its single ton of ammunition. That's just 10 shots to make count before the C-config Grendel is left with just an ER medium laser in the right arm with which to defend itself along with an anti-missile system in the left torso. If we're looking for a role for the C configuration, I would say it's probably most useful in dueling, but only if the LB-10X ammunition was solid shot. With cluster rounds, the mech lacks a significant punch to bring down an opponent. On a battlefield, the Grendel C configuration could be used to pester heavier mechs and contribute to fire from the rest of the star. If you have a creative use for the C configuration, please let me know. Our last of the original 3052 configurations was the D, and it reflected a return to form with a mixed generalist loadout. The D's primary weapon was an ER-PPC installed into the right torso. It was backed up by an ER medium laser and a medium pulse laser, each placed into the left arm. At shorter ranges, a short-range missile 6 rack was installed into the left torso along with 2 tons of ammunition. Finally, a small pulse laser in the right arm offered a nasty little surprise to anyone who wandered near. From mechs to infantry to that pile of maple leaves that Mini Frog needs to rake up this weekend. Heat was very much an issue for the D configuration anytime the ER-PPC was in play. The 15 heat generated per shot immediately took up 3/4 of the heat sinking capacity for the mech, leaving precious little else for weapons and a Kerensky forbid using jump jets. However, if used in a savvy manner, that ER-PPC could take a backseat to the other weapons once the Grendel D closes in on its softened up targets. A full strike without the PPC generated just 18 heat on the run, which is great for consistent multi-turn fire. Overall, the D configuration is a solid option if the primary configuration isn't your cup of Jeremiah's butte bricks. For a longer campaign, the D configuration could be a good date for the dance, as even the SRM-6 has 30 shots to work with. The downside of that, of course, is there are 30 shots of SRM-6 ammunition in that left torso. Even with case, blowing off the left side of your mech could be a very big indicator that one should retreat and fight another day. The Grendel brought up its left arm and fired its medium lasers built into the back of the forearm. One of the ruby beams flashed wide to the left, but the other hit the Daishi over the left arm, frying armor. The Grendel's right arm came around with a large laser's green beam flashing out. It caught Victor's mech over the left breast. Withered armor dropped in steaming puddles to the ground. The medium laser built into the crest of the Grendel's head also stabbed toward the Daishi. Its fury evaporated armor on the Omnimech's right arm, giving it a molten scar that matched the one on its left arm. Grave Covenant, page 275 through 276 by Michael A. Stackpole. From here on out, we're moving down the timeline with our Grendels as they start to incorporate new technologies. For example, the Grendel Configuration E, which arrives on the scene in 3061, sports a pair of advanced tactical missile 6 launchers split between the side torsos. Each fed by 2 tons of ammunition alongside their launchers, this offered the Mechwarrior some options in building either a long-range fire support, a generalist, or a short-range brawler, or a mixture of all three should one be bold enough as to do a creative split between the launchers. Backing up the ATMs were a medium pulse laser and ER small laser, each of them installed into the right arm. Heat really isn't an issue unless really pushing the E configuration with long jump jet trips, but the restricted ammunition for the ATM-6s did limit the Grendel to single battles or campaigns with solid logistics lines. The possible alpha strike damage with the high explosive ATM ammunition and both lasers was 48, which is impressive for a 45-ton battle mech. While real-world damage would be less than that considering the missile hit table, it's still an ideal we all hope for when seeking the favor of the dice gods. Hopping forward a couple of years to 3064, the Grendel H configuration was the first to include the heavy laser technology developed by Clan Staradder in late 3059. A 4-ton heavy large laser dominates the H configuration, offering a potential 16 damage hit out to 15 hexes. 2 ER medium lasers were installed into the left arm, which is a good choice as they share the range profile of the heavy large laser exactly. At shorter range, the Streak SRM-4 placed into the right torso along with its 1 ton of ammunition add a little bit more punch. Finally, the traditional ER small laser was moved up to the head critical location where the Mechwarrior can use it to stay warm and cozy on those cold winter nights. To help with the heat buildup for the lasers, 4 additional double heat sinks were added to the mech, pushing the total to 14. With 28 possible cooling, a Mechwarrior could fire the large heavy laser in both ER mediums while on the run and only end up at 2+ into the red. This is entirely manageable, and when the moment is right, adding that ER small laser and Streak SRM-4 to finish off a foe is only a 7+ in the red at the end of the turn. Overall, the build works, though its Mechwarrior would need to stay out of sight until close enough to bring that large heavy laser into play. Its +1 accuracy penalty could be painful until you can break into that medium or even short range bracket. 5 years later, the Grendel F configuration hit the scene sporting a pair of plasma cannons in the right arm. Able to reach out to 18 hexes, these ammunition weapons spew flaming plastic slugs that become plasma just before impacting a target. For units with heat sinks, it causes 2d6 heat at the end of a turn. For infantry and other squishy units, it's 3d6 damage in 5-point groupings, which can be quite devastating. Adding to the plasmatic fire, an advanced tactical missile 6 rack was added to the right torso along with enough space for 2 tons of ammunition. Heat really isn't an issue unless you get crazy with the jump jetting while alpha striking. Overall, the F configuration feels like a support mech that really needs to be with its star mates to supplement their fire. If it were a pure anti-infantry or anti-battle armor unit, the ATM-6 would be kind of an odd choice. As a pure fire support mech, the plasma cannons are just too limited in only being able to apply heat to other mechs. Plus, the 2 tons of ammunition meant just 10 shots per cannon without rearming. As much as I like plasma weaponry, I'm not sure about this F configuration. I think we might be able to do better. In 3086, the Grendel M configuration was graced with the very loud and intimidating rotary AC-2, nestled in the right arm location. Okay, maybe not so intimidating. Fed by a single ton of Case 2 protected ammunition, even the 2 version of this weapon can do decent damage, all the way out to 25 hexes too. Backing up the RAC-2 was an ER large laser in the left torso which could match that long range. Heat really isn't an issue unless you're pushing the jump jetting hard. The M configuration really appears to me as a configuration best used to pester targets at as long range as possible. Peppering an enemy with RAC-2 while scoring the occasional ER large laser hit could make this a useful tool in a fight. The concerns I have with it are the modest damage output and the single ton of ammunition for the RAC-2, which can go quicker than you think should you really get the gun spinning for a few turns in a row. I can't see ever bringing the M configuration into battle myself, but I suppose it's nice to have it for those who want it. Hopping down to 3090, the Grendel G configuration received a speed boost thanks to a supercharger installed into the center torso. This allowed for a shift up to 7-14-7 for when you absolutely need to get somewhere quickly. The G configuration was given 4 medium pulse lasers spread across the right arm and side torsos, and they were backed up by 5 micro pulse lasers spread across the mech's upper torso and head. Finally, a Watchdog CEWS was installed into the left torso. Surprisingly, the G configuration is very nearly heat neutral while standing, as those lasers only produce 21 heat. That's +1 into the red or +3 while on the run. While it does require getting close to make it happen, the racks of pulse lasers can do up to 43 damage. All that with a -2 to hit advantage. Woe to the light mech that wanders anywhere near the Grendel G. This thing will eat your lunch and then it'll eat your lunchbox. Waste heat began to build in Barclay's cockpit as the 2 mechs began to circle, trading shots, each looking for an advantage. The clanner fired a volley of short-range missiles from his chest-mounted launcher. The radar-guided chain gun in Barclay's anti-missile system clawed half of the flight from the air before they could inflict any damage. A heavy Gauss slug from the Cerberus splintered the remaining armor on the Grendel's right arm, snapping the endosteel bone beneath. The partially severed limb hung useless by a few strands of unbroken myomer. Shadow of War, Twilight of the Clans, Volume 6, page 168, by Thomas S. Gressman. As the Inner Sphere entered the 32nd century, the Grendel could be found not just in clan tumens, but also house militaries and persons of notable influence, and Clan Seafox still produced it at their SFF-AL2 production line on Alnabog. The influence of the Inner Sphere is obvious in our next variant, the I configuration, which arrived in the timeline in 3140 and carried 3 weapons that all shared that 5, 10, 15 range profile. The first was a plasma rifle set into the right torso and fed by 1 ton of ammunition. An ER medium laser in the left torso added its consistent 7 damage, and finally a Protomech AC-4 was added to the right arm and fed by 1 ton of ammunition. This is another one of those configurations where the very modest autocannon really cannot pay for itself with its weight commitment. Doing 4 damage per shot in exchange for 5.5 tons of mass, including the 20 shots of 1 ton of ammo, is extremely low, especially when the mech is also carrying an ER medium laser which outdamages the autocannon by almost twice as much at 1/5 the weight. As much as I want to like the I configuration with its plasma rifle, the Protomech AC-4 is an anchor of sadness. At least the mech is heat negative with an alpha strike while on the run. That's something, I suppose. In 3140, the Grendel J configuration embraced its long-held desire to be a short-range missile boat with the installation of 3 Streak SRM-6s split between the side torsos and right arm. They count as the configuration's primary weaponry, as the remaining weapons are all extremely close range. The ER small pulse laser in the head critical location lashes out to 6 hexes for 5 damage at -1 improved accuracy, and at 3 hexes, 2 improved small lasers could do 6 damage apiece. The 3-streak SRM-6 launchers are all fed by 2 tons of ammunition, which limits this build to single battles or campaigns with strong supply lines. Otherwise, the trio of launchers is quite powerful so long as the dice gods smile with targeting locks. The J configuration requires only minor heat management so long as the jump jetting is limited. Overall, it's a fun build, though if you play it on the tabletop, you might want to get one of those dice boxes to roll the damage for 18 SRMs should they all achieve a lock. Our last official configuration for the Grendel is the T, and it's our newest on the timeline in 3142. The longest range weapon was a classic large pulse laser which could reach out to 20 hexes for that -2 improved accuracy. From there, the T config has to charge forward to get within 9 hexes to bring its other weapons into play. 2 medium improved heavy lasers were set into the left arm, and they offer the prospect of doing 10 damage apiece, but at 7 heat for each shot. An SRM-6 in the right torso bolstered the damage further at that 9 hex max distance and closer. Once close enough to cuddle, the ER small laser located in the head critical location added 5 more damage. Finally, an improved heavy small laser in the right arm could reach out to 3 hexes for 6 damage per shot. Altogether, it's an interesting mix of shorter range weaponry along with that large pulse laser, but it really requires the Mechwarrior to be extremely close to the target in order to do most of its damage. This could be a problem unless the T configuration is picking on lighter mechs exclusively. Anything bigger than the Grendel is likely going to be able to burn down its armor before the T config can get within 9 hexes. With only 2 extra heat sinks, heat is an issue for the T config, even if it can get close enough for that close range conflict resolution. A full alpha strike while on the run left the T at 11+ in the red, which is a good place to be if you want your 45-ton mech to be quickly rendered into a fine paste by incoming fire. The Grendel T configuration is interesting, but it has a few too many different weapons and range profiles for me to consider it a fun pick. For the totally unofficial and non-canon MF configuration, I wanted to take the primary config and make it more of a sniper with the addition of a clan targeting computer in the left torso. This required sacrificing some of the short-range weaponry, but overall, I think it remains quite potent. An ER large laser sits pretty in the right arm and it can punch out to 25 hexes. Backing it up at mid-range were 3 ER medium lasers in the right arm. For close-range movement up on that hierarchy of needs, 4 medium machine guns in the right torso are fed by a half-ton of ammunition in the right arm. With 3 additional pod heat sinks, the Grendel MF runs fairly cool, though if all 3 ER medium lasers are fired along with the ER large while on the run, it's still looking at 3+ into the red. Do that twice in a row and you're eating your first -1 to your movement profile. Depending on your Mechwarrior's location, that could be entirely doable. If you'd like to give the Grendel MF a try, I've included the record sheet for it in a Dropbox link in the video notes below. So why do we love the Grendel? As we've seen from the available official configurations, the Grendel can serve a variety of needs, and in comparison to other medium OmniMech peers, it stands as a happy medium between agility, pod space, and armor. While opportunity cost spares no one, it is possible to straddle the line sometimes for a more moderate build, and the Grendel demonstrates the value in doing so. For a 45-ton mech in a crowded field of really good clan medium mechs, the Grendel can hold its own. That's why we love it. Have you brought the Grendel to your tabletop games? Has it performed well, or has it fizzled? Let me know in the comments and we'll keep the conversation going. Thank you as always for coming by today as we play in the BattleTech universe. It's been a wonderful year for the channel, and looking down the road, I'm excited to keep it going well into 2025 with your support. If you haven't already, hitting that like and subscribe button will make sure that YouTube algorithm is happy, and as a result, you'll be much more likely to see my nonsense in the future. Going that extra step and becoming a channel member or supporting on Ko-fi will go a long way to making sure I can keep this project going. I really appreciate it and the opportunity to do my part to support BattleTech. With that, I'll say have an awesome week. Please stay positive and go out and make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.